may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, so lately I've been reading the comment section, and it sounds like a lot of y'all are assuming that these are Dynasty videos because we make Dynasty videos every single day on our Dynasty channel. And I'm assuming maybe the channels are just getting mixed up. So from now on, I'm going to be giving the disclaimer that this video right now is not a Dynasty fantasy football video. While that's my favorite way to play fantasy football, I understand that a lot of people just want to go year to year. So that's why we are going to be talking about 2021 production on this channel. Obviously, it's still very important if you are playing Dynasty to understand what the current projections are for players this upcoming season, because not only is it going to change how you view them on a contending team, but it's also going to change how you view them on a rebuilding team with what their long-term value may be. So no, this is not Dynasty, but I understand the importance behind it. Now, I will say, if y'all been wanting to get into a Dynasty Fantasy Football League, we have very exciting news in that in about 1 hour after this video is uploaded, I'm going to be making an announcement over there on Patreon how you can get in our newest Dynasty League. Now, if you're watching this after 1 hour, still over there on Patreon, we do a Dynasty startup almost every single week. So if you are wanting to get in one, if you want to learn more about that format, then make sure you just go down to the description of the video, join Patreon. That's where also all of our 2021 redraft fantasy football leagues will be. But that's it. Let's go through and let's talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's talk about a team that is so hard to evaluate because we have a very small sample with their current starting quarterback in Jalen Hurts. Now, with Jalen Hurts, y'all know I loved him. I loved him coming into the NFL draft. I loved his value in pretty much all drafts last year, and we were the first people to pick him up off the waiver wire in those redraft formats. And the reason that we were doing this is simple. It's not because he was a mid to late second round pick in the NFL draft. It's not because he was only 21 years old coming into the NFL, because we know that those things really don't matter too much for fantasy, especially at the quarterback position. But it was because the rushing upside that he possessed, and we know how important it is to identify those rushing quarterbacks for fantasy football, because while they can sometimes fail in the NFL, while even if they are very bad real life NFL quarterbacks, they could still be great to elite fantasy options if they're picking up a tremendous amount of value on the ground. Now, before we get any further, please go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a ton. And something I would like to do from now on with these videos is I'm going through and I'm giving you my opinion on Jalen Hurts, Miles Sanders, DeVonta Smith, Jalen Reagor, and Dallas Goedert. Please, you do the same thing in the comment section below. You don't need to leave a long explanation, but just write out those player names and then just write sell, hold, or buy next to them. That way I have a kind of a consensus on what y'all are thinking. But that's it. Let's dive into Jalen Hurts. And we already kind of teased his rushing upside. And I don't want to just look at what happened in 2020. We will dive into that. But more importantly, with these players that have that small sample at the NFL level, what I want to be doing is I want to be focusing in on what they did in college. And Jalen Hurts in his final year, obviously only played 1 year at OU, but in that season, he had a 70% completion percentage. He had an elite efficiency mark where he had 11.3 yards per pass attempt. So on average, he was passing for a first down on average. And he also had 32 passing touchdowns and 8 interceptions. And while those are great numbers, while they're impressive, what's more important and why we liked him so much coming out of college was the fact that he averaged 92 rushing yards a game and he had 20 total rushing touchdowns in his final season. Now, that is absolutely absurd. And a quick side brag is I actually got to see Jalen Hurts in person beat my University of Texas Longhorns. It was sad, but Jalen Hurts and CeeDee Lamb just kind of stomped us until we weren't moving anymore. But nonetheless, let's move on to what Jalen Hurts actually did in his rookie season. Now, if you look at the per game averages, they're going to be completely skewed. I mean, really, you can't look at the season-long numbers for Jalen Hurts. What you have to do instead is you have to pull up that game log. You have to then go through and do your own math with what the averages were for the games that he started. And in the last 4 games for the Philadelphia Eagles in which Jalen Hurts started last year, he had a 52% completion percentage, which is whatever for fantasy. You're not too worried about that. He had 230 passing yards. He averaged 1.25 passing touchdowns and 0.75 interceptions. So you hear those numbers and you go, Okay, that's gross. I don't want anything to do with this offense. I don't want anything to do with Jalen Hurts. Well, let me tell you the rushing side. Let me tell you why we were drafting him. Let me tell you why we were so excited to pick him up off the waiver wire in those redraft leagues. And it's because Jalen Hurts in those 4 games, keep in mind he got benched at the end of one game, averaged 68 rushing yards a game. Now, that is absurd. If you look at the top quarterbacks from last season in rushing, the guys you would expect, a Lamar Jackson, a Kyler Murray, Cam Newton was actually 3rd in rushing. Lamar Jackson averaged 67 rushing yards a game. Kyler Murray, 51. Cam Newton, 39. So all less than what we saw in the small sample of Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts also averaged 0.75 rushing touchdowns. Now, this is a small sample, so you can't just assume that this is going to maintain over the course of a 16-game season. But I think it's safe to say that Jalen Hurts would project to be in the top 3 quarterbacks in terms of what he is giving you on the ground. And we have seen historically over the past 5 years that the quarterback position in fantasy has completely changed. The quarterback position in the NFL has changed, where now they're prioritizing those guys that have the mobility. They're prioritizing the guys that can pick up first downs on the ground. Well, that's changing the landscape in fantasy as well, because now if you're a quarterback that can't average at the minimum 20 rushing yards a game, I don't want you in fantasy. I want no part of you. And now you have with Jalen Hurts the capability to average 3 times that. I mean, if we go through and we go, okay, say Jalen Hurts picks up 60 rushing yards a game this upcoming season, which is a little less than what he did last year. What would that be with passing yardage? Well, 60 rushing yards in terms of passing yards, if we do some quick math, that's 6 points. Most leagues have 1 point per 25 passing yards. So if we go through, what is that, 150? Maybe even a little bit more than that. Let's just call it 150. That's off the top of my head. But just imagine you're getting a quarterback that automatically starts the game with 150 passing yards. Jalen Hurts is a cheat code in fantasy, not to mention that he did this with the worst supporting cast in the NFL last year. I mean, his top wide receivers through that 4-game stretch were Greg Ward, Jalen Reagor, and Quez Watkins. Greg Ward, Jalen Reagor, and Quez Watkins. Like, that is a complete joke. Now, at least Jalen Reagor maybe is going to be able to progress now that he's a little healthier. We'll talk about Jalen Reagor at the end of the video. And you have DeVonta Smith coming in. DeVonta Smith, we're not going to tease him too much. We'll just talk about him at the end of the video. So for all these reasons, I mean, the skill positional group is upgraded. Now they're going to be able to design the offense around Jalen Hurts. And we have already seen this elite potential in fantasy based on what he can do on the ground. I mean, Jalen Hurts is someone I'm targeting in drafts. He's a buy for me, to be completely honest. Now, our next running back, our only running back of the video is Miles Sanders. I'm not going to talk about him that long because we just talked about him in yesterday's video. But with Miles Sanders, he currently has an ADP of 31, so he's going to be a mid-third round pick this upcoming year. He's 24 years old, and in 2020, he finished as a low-end running back 2 in points per game. And I took it in yesterday's video, but every time we bring up Miles Sanders this offseason, I'm going to have to take my L, because not only was I coming out in last offseason saying draft Miles Sanders, target him aggressively, I also saw that we were wrong at the beginning of the year. And instead of just rolling over and admitting defeat right then, I came out and I said, Miles Sanders is buy low. Miles Sanders is buy low. We know the talent profile coming out of Penn State. We saw it at the end of 2019. Go get this guy. And I was wrong the first time. I was wrong the second time, and now we're upcoming on the third time. And here with Miles Sanders, if you look at the grand scheme of things, I mean, in 2020, he averaged 15 carries a game. He averaged 4.33 targets for 88 total yards. Now, what I want to do is I want to break it down with Jalen Hurts. What happened when Jalen Hurts was the starting quarterback for Philadelphia? And here are suspicions remain true. You saw 15 carries a game, 3.5 targets, and 85 total yards. So y'all are wondering what suspicions, and that is that you are going to see the target share go down for Miles Sanders when Jalen Hurts is in the game. And I know you're tired of hearing me talk about this by now, but it's so important in fantasy, and anybody who hasn't heard it, I want to make sure they have the opportunity to. But rushing quarterbacks are just going to hurt how many targets the running back is getting out of the backfield. Now, it's sad to say, and there are some positives that you're going to find with rushing quarterbacks, and that it doesn't completely hurt the guy. It's going to depend on the running back that you're evaluating, because we know with rushing quarterbacks, yes, whenever they go to hand the ball off, they get so much more attention from defending linebackers that really that running back is going to have more space to operate. This is what you saw with J.K. Dobbins running with Lamar Jackson last year. J.K. Dobbins was at the very top of the NFL in yards per carry. So the efficiency per touch should go up, given the fact that if you're an opposing linebacker, and I know I've said this a million times, but you can't crash down on the running back when Jalen Hurts goes to hand it off to Miles Sanders. Because if that happens, then, hey, Jalen Hurts is going to keep that ball. He's going to run across the edge. But what you see is Jalen Hurts, instead of being like a Drew Brees, where we know Drew Brees drops back to pass. Hey, if Michael Thomas isn't there, if Jared Cook isn't there, it looks like I'm dumping it off to Alvin Kamara because I have no other option. Alvin Kamara, you are just going to be getting target after target after target. Whereas if you have a guy like Taysom Hill, then he looks at he looks at Michael Thomas. And if that's not there, he goes, okay, well, let's tuck it and run. That's our option here. And that's what you have to be worried about with Jalen Hurts as well, that he is not going to want to get Miles Sanders that usage in the receiving game. And another thing that you need to be worried about is the fact that once you get to the goal line, you can see that quarterback vulture rushing touchdowns. This is why we were not drafting at Evan Singletary last year. This is why we weren't drafting a Zach Moss, because we went, hey, there's no goal line value here. Josh Allen's going to run it in almost every single time. So it's hard to evaluate Miles Sanders. I'll say that what I would rather do is I'd rather just make sure we're drafting our running backs in the second round. That way we don't have to make this decision on Miles Sanders in the third, because I would say that compared to the other running backs that he is going near, he's a fair price. I mean, it's not like Miles Sanders is being grossly overvalued in the running back rankings. I think it's more so where he is going in overall drafts that I can't get behind. So for that reason, I'm going to be calling him a hold. I'm not going to be calling him just a flat out sell, given the fact that maybe with some builds, you're kind of forced to take Miles Sanders at the end of the third. And I don't want to be listing him as a player that you're avoiding at all cost. Okay, so now our next guy is going to be Dallas Goedert, who historically I've been very low on. Historically, I've been low on Dallas Goedert after his rookie season, especially in dynasty formats. And I know we're not talking dynasty here, but what you found with Dallas Goedert is you found everybody coming out and they were saying, hey, this is the best tight end in Philadelphia. This is going to be the guy that's taking over right away. He has an elite talent profile. We saw this in his rookie season. It's going to happen sooner rather than later. We need to value him at that now. Well, since then, what we've actually seen is Zach Ertz is most likely out of Philadelphia. Zach Ertz, his days are numbered. He's most likely done skis. And now Dallas Goedert, at the hardest position to develop in football, the guys that we avoid them as rookies and we draft them later on when the hype dies down, he fits that exact mold. Now, he is currently going in the middle of the 8th round in drafts. He's 26 years old, and this is the time you expect that elite jump up. This is the time you expect that breakout. Now, in 2020, he did finish as a low-end tight end 1. He finished as the tight end 9 in points per game. But there was one game that he only got like one ball, and then he got injured, and he had to leave. If you take that out of the equation, and you look at what his points per game would be then Dallas Goedert would have been the tight end 5, which not a lot of people understand because it was a season that was extremely riddled by injuries. Now, this is improvement from where he was in 2019 at tight end 11. So I think Dallas Goedert is like the perfect reason why you don't draft rookie tight ends. You don't draft sophomore tight ends. No, you wait until they're 26 years old. You wait until the hype has died down, and then that's your time to buy in. You go, hey, he probably wasn't going to break out until now anyway, so let's not pay those premium prices when he's just developing. Let's wait until he's a finished product, which I believe Dallas Goedert is. Let's buy in during that time. Go get Dallas Goedert in drafts. He's a fantastic value. I mean, getting Dallas Goedert in the 8th compared to Kyle Pitts in the 3rd or 4th is laughable. I mean, Dallas Goedert should be close to the same tier, not going 5 rounds after Kyle Pitts in drafts. Now, let's go over to the wide receiver position, someone we kind of referenced earlier at the beginning. Let's talk about Jalen Reagor, who currently is going in the 11th round of drafts, and this was very surprising. Now, my immediate thought was to call Jalen Reagor a sell because we know that while we can love Jalen Hurts, while we can go, Jalen Hurts is our guy, we want to be drafting Jalen Hurts in almost every league. Still, that doesn't mean his wide receivers are going to be great. I mean, Lamar Jackson has been an elite fantasy asset, and you haven't seen great options coming out of Baltimore. But here, with the case of Jalen Reagor, I know he had a very disappointing rookie season, but you look at the injuries that he suffered, and I think they were simply more serious than what was led on. Now, in the preseason, before the season started, he had a shoulder dislocation and a labral tear. And then in week 2, he had a UCL tear that actually required surgery and kept him out a good chunk of the season. So we know for a 21-year-old wide receiver, I mean, this guy is younger than I am. He's 21 years old. Of course, it's going to be hard for him to get going. And when you see that coaching change at the very end of the year, and you see that quarterback change kind of halfway through the year. I mean, there was just so much turmoil going on in Philadelphia last year that I think pretty much when it comes to Jalen Reagor, you're going to have to ignore his rookie season. I mean, it was a season riddled by injuries. It was a season where he only had 5 targets a game, 36 yards, and 1 total touchdown. So I'll say, with Reagor, if you liked him coming into the NFL draft, I think you need to be buying. If you did not like him coming into the NFL draft in 2020, I think you need to be selling. And we were not in on Jalen Reagor at all. I hated Jalen Reagor last year. So because of that, I think we're still going to be selling this season. The price is definitely a lot more reasonable now, so I will admit that. But I think it's just simple. If you liked him before, you should like him now. If you didn't like him before, there's no reason to like him now. So we are selling Jalen Reagor. Now, our last guy is going to be DeVonta Smith. Now, here with DeVonta Smith, the clear wide receiver 1 in Philadelphia, in my opinion. Now, he is going at the very end of the 7th round, the beginning of 8th round in current drafts, which is kind of crazy. If you look at Jamar Chase going at the end of the 4th round, I mean, there's just a massive difference between the 2 wide receivers. And here with DeVonta Smith, I mean, he just put up one of the most impressive, if not the most impressive, college wide receiver season of all time with 142 receiving yards, 9 receiving yards a game as well, and 24 total touchdowns in his final year at Alabama in the toughest conference there is. So with DeVonta Smith, I think that based on the discount you're getting, you're looking at Jamar Chase as a late 4th round pick and DeVonta Smith as an early 8th, even if the passing volume is lowered in Philadelphia. I think DeVonta Smith is a perfectly fine pick with this range. I'd definitely be drafting Smith before I'd be drafting Reagor, even though Reagor is going later in drafts. I think the Smith value is better. So here, I'm going to label Smith as a hold. I kind of lean halfway between a hold and halfway between a buy. The problem is I'm just expecting the passing volume to be a little bit lower on this offense. But I would say compared to the other wide receivers here with their ADPs, I mean, he's a much better value than a guy like Jamar Chase, but I'm not buying Jamar Chase in the 4th. I think with DeVonta Smith, if you can get him in the 8th, that is fantastic. Now, thank you guys. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. I really hope y'all got something from it. Of course, if y'all did, go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a ton, and I'll see y'all with the video tomorrow. I really owe a massive thank you for all the Patreon supporters in Ben, Braden, Zach, Ryan, William, Derek, Justin, Marshall, Tyler, and Eamon. Thank you so much, guys.